Hello and welcome to another edition of Video Games to the Max, and the whole crew is together for this one. I haven't looked at what number it is, so I'm not even going to bother guessing, but I am your host for today, Sean Garmer, and here with me, as always, Mr. Mark Morrison.
Howdy.
And I'm glad to have him back once again, Daniel Anderson.
Hello.
Well, guys, another week in video games, and have you been playing anything? I know both of you guys last week were talking about how you really haven't had anything big to be playing. Daniel did send me a Trek to Yomi review, which I'll get up on the site tomorrow by the time you're listening to this. Mark, anything you want to discuss here?
Beat Mass Effect 3 again. Only been like 8 years since I played it last, or 9 years. I picked up a game called Manifold Garden a few weeks ago, and I beat that. That's like a weird, like artistic puzzle game, kind of like Superliminal or like the Talos Principle or something like that, or
Didn't that launch with one of the consoles?
Maybe.
I swear. Yeah.
I mean, it's not that old. I mean, it just came out.
Yeah.
I mean, it came out in like 2019. It's
Okay.
ported to like pretty much everything. But it's cool. It was like 2 or 3 hours. And then you can do like a speed run, which is like a lot faster and way more crazy. I picked up a game called Blue Reflection Second Light.
Yes, I've heard good things about that game. RPG.
Yeah, it's a little like JRPG, like porny, but it's fine. There's only women in the game, and they're all like 16 or 17-year-old girls, and they're all wearing the most like ridiculous clothing ever. It's all like Japanese schoolgirl outfits that are like really improbable.
It's like Senran Kagura, sort of, but not a fighting game.
Well, it's not. That's like the weird thing is like they're all wearing these like outfits, but they're not focusing on it. Or they do,
Okay.
but it's not like heavily. It's not like that bad. Let's say,
But isn't part of it is you're also like gaining extra suits and things for them to wear?
I mean, there are some outfit options, but I'm not sure like how much I can actually buy later on, or if it's just like, oh, you got like 4 other outfits, and like one is a bikini, but it's only for like the main girl. Like I think there's like a bunch of DLC that you can buy if you want it to get way grosser. But yeah, it's all right. It's an interesting RPG so far. I guess the 2 things I'll mention real quick. I finally got my Game Boy Flash card, which I ordered in April 1st. So it only took a month and a half.
Jesus, really?
To be fair, it was coming from the Ukraine, and they have an issue going on right now.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, it was like stuck in Ukraine for like a month straight.
Well, yeah.
And then like May 1st, they finally did like they finally up like, oh, we finally found it, or we finally got it, and I'm like, all right, cool. And I bought a NES action set with like complete in box. Well, you saw the picture.
That looks cool.
Yeah, it's NES, 2 controllers, the light gun. I mean, it's like the basic like NES set. Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. It is cool. I never had an NES growing up. I mean, I played them as a kid, but I never actually owned one. And
yeah, I never had one either. That was my brother's console.
I mean, it wasn't even in my house. Like I just didn't. Yeah. My mom was like, weirdly against consoles, so. But I mean, that box is so nice, and like everything in it is pretty pristine. So I'm not going to play with this one either.
Yeah,
I mean, I got it primarily as a collectible.
Okay, fair enough. Anything for you?
So I bought Medieval Dynasty last year. It's an early access. I've updated it and have been messing around with it a little bit in the last few days, just seeing what all they changed and going through it. It's a good way to kill an hour or 2 if you need to pass some time. I mean, nothing great about it, but nothing terrible either. It's functional. It works. I enjoy it. So, I mean, it's a pretty solid game at this point.
A PC game, I assume, or a console?
PC.
Yeah. It sounds like a PC game.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically medieval times. You escaped from something that destroyed your village, and you get to where your uncle lived, and you have to basically create your own first home, then village, and set up a dynasty. You have family and basically grow your dynasty and get...
Oh, I think I've seen a trailer or like some pictures of this game.
I mean, it's a nice game. I enjoy it.
Is it like a better version of like The Sims Medieval?
I mean, it's first person, so you're actually going around doing everything.
Yeah,
it's not a It's not a third-person game, but again, I enjoy it. It passes some time, and it's entertaining enough.
All right. Well, I haven't, other than the occasional FIFA 22 game here and there, haven't really done much of that. So
the beloved FIFA is going away.
It'll just be it'll be the same thing, just have a different name. So unlike the college football game that they basically had to dissolve because they didn't know what to do with how do we really pay the players? This one they already know that system, so
that's coming back next year though, so that'll be fun.
Well, let's see how far that really exists. Considering what has been going on in the landscape right now with college football in general. So yeah, so it's been work, and it is what it is. Adulting sometimes gets in the way of things you want to do, as we all know at this point. But anyway, at least there has been some news, even though a lot of it is not really game per se related, is more like other game tangible related, or what could happen to companies, including Electronic Arts pretty much being looks like the next. Well, it wasn't too long ago, Mark and I talked about Ubisoft potentially wanting to be acquired. Now Electronic Arts actually went through the motions and almost got merged into NBC Universal. Imagine what that would have been like. Being part of NBC Universal's entertainment division, and they also spoke to Disney, Apple, and Amazon at some point about being acquired or merged with. Obviously, the current EA CEO, Andrew Wilson, wanted to keep running the company, so that was part of the...
What company would agree to that?
Well, I mean, okay, let's say that, the entertainment section is going to get spun off by NBC Universal, which this is probably why the whole thing actually lasted as far as it did. Apparently it didn't continue because of money propositions or anything.
It makes sense to keep the person in charge with the company making money, keep them there to keep making the decisions that make them money. They're just getting funded from somewhere else.
I mean, to a certain extent, but he's made a lot of bad decisions, though, also. And it's not like, when NetherRealm gets spun off, sold eventually, Ed Boon's going to go with them because he's like the face of the company. He's like the main creative guy. It's not like Andrew Wilson is like that integral to the EA success story. I mean, if anyone, that'd be like John Riccatello, and he's been gone for years.
Yeah, but I mean, EA is still making good money. I mean,
yeah,
we can hate them, we can make fun of them all we want. We can make fun of how crazy it would be to have two of the most hated companies combined into one, but they make money. So
you mean Apple and EA?
Comcast, Xfinity, NBC Universal. If you have Comcast,
the really crazy one is actually Disney. Like, because they're like they don't make games to begin with, or they got out of the game business pretty much. So
yeah, I can't imagine what that would help them with, especially if they had told EA, we don't want to renew our 10-year partnership with you. We want other people to make our Star Wars games. What would acquiring an entire game publisher help them with?
The only thing I can think of is there's a new CEO at Disney, so maybe the CEO had a different idea, or maybe it was just EA going to him and say, "Would you be interested in purchasing us?" And Disney said no.
That's probably the better of the two options,
yeah. I mean, it does speak to a larger issue of, you guys talked about Square-Enix selling off their Western division. Basically, they still have some studios, but it's basically that was the main part of it, to Embracer Group, which at least it still stayed in a video game company. But this is kind of what Microsoft was talking about, right? Phil Spencer has said it for many years. The reason why we're buying, other than obviously they need stuff for Game Pass, which we'll talk about later, is we want to make sure that other bigger companies that don't have anything to do with gaming start plucking out different publishers or studios or whatever. We've seen what Netflix is doing. They bought, After Party Studios, and then they started bringing in people to make all these diverse things, and then fired them all of a sudden because they didn't get as many subs as they needed to. They started killing their anime division because of that. I mean, so when you get these big companies buy these studios, like, what if they just decide we don't need half of these studios? Goodbye. Is it going to make it even worse? Like, we talk about how, okay, EA won so many awards last year with It Takes Two. What happens if NBC Universal buys them? Do they just say, okay, we only want the sports stuff. The rest of the stuff, we don't care about that. It's not making any money. You're funding it, and it's.
I mean, that's what EA does now.
I know, okay, but what I'm saying is EA is actually trying to. Who would have thought they would make Jedi Fallen Order, and it actually works out to be good? I mean, Knockout City was a hit for them. It Takes Two was a hit for them. Lost in Random really wasn't, but some of these originals are working out for them. They bought Codemasters, which I think that's partially also to make them look better for a potential, not necessarily for really wanting all those racing properties, but it does help them, like we talked about before, Mark, about if they wanted to have a bunch of people to pluck from to improve Need for Speed. I guess you have that. But do you worry about, man, all these sort of Western studios are like priming themselves to get acquired? I mean, what does that say about the gaming industry?
It's not good or not healthy.
I think it's more a lot of companies have seen just how much Activision Blizzard sold for, and
yeah, they want a piece of that $40 billion pie.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If EA was going to get a similar amount and business was going to continue as usual, they were just getting more money from their parent company. Why not do it? I mean, the people that are in charge will make a ton of money from the buyout, and they still keep their jobs, and nothing else matters. Nothing else matters to them because they're keeping their job. They're making money on the deal. They're good with it.
Yeah. That's why EA wanted to merge, not necessarily get acquired, because merging would mean more like, okay, we're just keeping things the way they are, but we're merging with you so that you can help us pay for things.
I think if they went up to Disney and said, "Hey, if you want to buy us, it'll be $40 billion." That'd be better, or that'd be a better, potential deal than merging for sure.
Right, but what they're trying to make it seem like is that merging would have meant more protection for them, and that, like I said, if they. Because I that's what I worry about. I worry more about these big companies that aren't Microsoft, that aren't Sony, that aren't Embracer Group. They have another agenda besides video games, right? So where, Sony has another agenda besides video games, but video games is a huge part of their pie at this point. So they can't really just go, oh, PlayStation.
Same with Microsoft. Like we were talking earlier, that Microsoft originally wanted to spin off the game division because
they did.
Profitable.
They did put gaming into its own division. That's why Phil Spencer is like head of gaming or whatever now. But I'm just saying, like, Microsoft has the money to do that. They are fitting the bill for Xbox. They're trying to push Xbox into a different sphere themselves. But like, let's say Apple buys it and they really can't figure out how to make this work for them. And they go, oh, well, kill all these studios like Google did, right? Google tried to get all these original studios, killed it, and then what happened? Oh, now Stadia is some tech that they're trying to sell to somebody. I mean, could they end up dying off because they don't get bought by someone?
I hope so.
Maybe not. The fact that EA feels strong enough that they can do without the FIFA, which honestly, the FIFA license means nothing when you look at that series. It means the World Cup and nothing else, because all the players, all the other leagues are another entity completely that has nothing to do with FIFA. So the fact that EA is still going without all that just kind of means, do they really need that? Now, whereas Ubisoft, I wonder if they're really needing that acquisition or that merger to really be able to keep things going for them.
And they just said that Beyond Good and Evil 2 is going to be the most badass game ever.
Oh, yeah. What, in 10 years or whenever that comes out?
They got Skull and Bones. They're good.
Well, I think also you might have some of this acquisition going on or people more openly talking about it, because if the inflation keeps rising, if the economy contracts, luxuries like gaming might start getting cut from people's budgets, and you might see projects getting cut from that. Whereas a company like NBC, Universal, Comcast, I forgot what the overall parent company is, but at least with NBC Universal, they have properties that they could make games for to try to. I mean, it kind of aligns a little bit better than going to like Apple or Disney would work, but going to like Apple and trying to just have games from scratch wouldn't work.
Yeah, and I don't think Amazon, even though their latest project has worked with New World, I don't know if they have really proved that. I mean, Luna's doing okay, but like
Well, I
they
mean,
don't. They, yeah,
Lost Ark is like the actually like popular game. New World did well initially, but it's bottomed out.
right. I mean, Lost Ark's doing okay, but I'm just saying like they still haven't proven themselves. Like, oh well, they could take an EA and really do something with it. It's still kind of up in the air as to is Amazon going to keep going. They do have Twitch that could help them. Obviously, I still wouldn't trust them. I mean, obviously, the most the most direct thing that would have worked for EA would have been Microsoft because they already have to deal with Game Pass for EA Play and everything. But obviously, they can't buy EA after they have to deal with Activision and Blizzard going on right now. So, and Sony, I think, has made it clear they do not want to buy publishers. They'll buy studios, but they don't want to buy a whole publisher. So,
I mean,
other than maybe Square Enix, if they
yeah,
were willing to offer
Sony wouldn't want to
themselves.
buy EA. They would more happily buy Square or Capcom or possibly even Sega.
Yeah, I think if EA does get bought, from the information in the story, they're going to keep running just as they are now. They're just going to have extra funding from a parent company. I don't think anything massive will change with it, honestly.
We'll have to see. I mean, once that parent company's putting in money, they then have the right to tell you which games to make and which ones not. So
they do, but as long as EA
yeah.
is still making money, they're gonna. I would imagine they're gonna be more hands off with it.
Yeah, I mean, when you have Madden and you have whatever the soccer game is going to be called, and you have what Mass Effect and Dragon Age, that whenever those games do come out, will sell well. That will obviously cut you some slack for a while. But I wonder if they start looking at things and going, oh, hey, these games aren't really making a lot. Do you have to keep making them? That's the thing that's kind of worrisome is you kind of want to still be able to see some of that stuff happen. You know, you still want to see the It Takes Two's and other things come out of that studio as well. You know,
EA just published that. They didn't.
right? But they're putting the money towards it. So yeah, somebody else could pick them up, and Microsoft could add them to the ID at Xbox or whatever. But they're still putting the money in. So if another company is the one that's actually sort of saying, here's what you can make, here's what you can't, does that start affecting those games? You know, or does they just say, okay, well, as long as you're putting your money in and not ours, then whatever. We'd have to actually see that happen. We technically haven't seen that happen yet.
Well, I think the other thing with NBC Universal you'd have to look at as well. Think about all the IPs that they own for TVs and movies.
Right.
And you could see NBC make a Mass Effect or a Dragon Age TV show or miniseries or movie, something to try to get more people interested in Peacock.
Exactly. I mean, that could happen, like you said. You know,
they could be looking at it not just to get the video games, but to get the rights to the IP to make movies and TV shows with them.
I want NBC to buy EA so they can make a Madden TV show.
Essentially, like Hard Knocks, but the whole year. Moving on from merger or acquisition news to, hey, Raven Software finally got what they want after all this time. They got their union. 19-3 was the final vote. It's going to be called the Game Workers Alliance. That's pretty encouraging for perhaps further things happening at other video game companies. How will Microsoft deal with this?
I think Microsoft has said they're fine with it, but I look to EA or to Activision's going like, no, we're just going to shut down Raven now.
I mean, I'm pretty sure Microsoft would not let them do that, or they would resurrect Raven as soon as the acquisition happened, because that would just be so bad PR.
The question is so I'm trying to be really. I've dealt with unions at jobs before, and some are good, some are bad. If they're not going to try to gouge the parent company, if the union does not try to gouge the parent company and just tries to make things fair, I don't think it'll be a problem. If you get a union that's trying to gouge the parent company, not really help the workers, and is just trying to make some money, I think you're going to see some pushback, and you could see Raven getting closed down if it's not profitable with the union there. Now, I know this is only QA workers, but I mean, I've been in places where people have, because of a union, people have been lazy, not done any work, and basically couldn't get fired, or it was too much trouble to fire them. I've also been in places with the union where the union's been really good and it didn't protect those type of workers. So it really just depends. But I could see this going either way, or just because we're only talking about 28 employees, I think. I could see it just not really mattering one way or the other because it's such a small group of employees currently.
Right. I mean, it is a small subsection of the bigger overall Activision, Blizzard, all that. So considering how Microsoft's already, you don't really hear a lot about people saying it's a bad place to work or anything like that. I'd imagine that they would do what they can to work with that. I don't think that salary or anything like that is going to be an issue for Microsoft, obviously.
No, I think the main Activision problem was overworking or too many hours,
right?
Or overtime.
But I mean, until the buyout gets final regulatory approval, Activision's still in charge, so they could.
Right.
I mean, who knows what's going to happen at this point?
Yeah, I mean, and I just mentioned people don't really talk much about Microsoft. Honestly, you don't hear that much about Sony PlayStation's workplace either, except for in the case of there is now another gender-based discrimination, gender-based harassment suit that was filed against PlayStation. The first one was dismissed in April. That was why we really didn't talk about it much, because it felt like they announced it and then pretty quickly it got dismissed. It wasn't like the Activision Blizzard one that kind of stayed on and kept going. This one, again, is the same kind of thing of kind of just discriminating against the genders. Obviously, we have a different thing where you have PlayStation in Japan, PlayStation United States. So that's two different forms of looking at a workplace.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this? You think this one's going to have any more legs than the other one? I mean,
from what I read, this one is the same person is involved with it. They just added more proof and more examples of what's happened to get around the reason that it was dismissed the first time. And I think other people have come forward with similar stories. The big thing is it going to be, and I haven't done a deep dive into it, but if it's just one manager making these comments and the person never reported it and then they turned around and sued, that's one thing. Whereas if it was reported and then it was ignored, that looks bad on the entire company. You can get away by saying it's one manager, we got rid of him, blah, 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 there's no reason to sue. But if it was reported and then ignored, that's when you get into these big lawsuits.
Though what's the specific about this one is that it wasn't, the last one was very broad. So the last one was trying to encompass all of PlayStation's employees in the United States. Now it's only these women who worked in the California branch of PlayStation under this vice president. And one of the allegations, that's sort of the one that's kind of the biggest one that was added, was at Sony Online Entertainment, they received an email from an engineer saying that I shouldn't wear a skirt anymore because it was distracting him. And then there's also men ranking female colleagues on hotness levels. And there was an email distributed with filthy jokes and images of women used throughout the workday to share further offensive images of women. It almost kind of screams a lot like that one from, what is the studio, Quantic Dream, where
the boss is a pig.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I that's terrible that these women had to go through that. Yeah,
I don't think it's like a systemic problem though. Unlike
that's why. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is that's why that first one got thrown out, because it's like you don't have any evidence showing that this is an entire PlayStation problem.
Yeah,
you need to be a bit more. So this is that boss problem. Okay, then let's make it about that boss. I could see them getting some kind of lawsuit win here.
I mean, it'll settle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Sony's going to try to settle it as quickly as they can just to keep it from blowing up, because if it is more widespread and more people come forward, then they could expand it, and I don't think Sony wants to see that happen.
Yeah, probably like nip it in the bud before it gets to anything that would even approach the Activision Blizzard level, if there is that. But you have to hope that there's not. Again, terrible for these women that went through that in their specific workplace that is under the PlayStation umbrella. You never want to see that. Hopefully, it does not. You don't find out that this is a bigger thing because you'd hate to see that. Obviously, this is a big thing in gaming. We hear about it. We heard about it with indie studios as well. It's not anything new. It will probably continue to be coming out throughout these years as people do more investigative journalism about this stuff. Let's just hope that the more this stuff comes out, the more this shows workplaces in gaming that you need to change and don't be this way. Don't be this way. We don't need that. I guess I wouldn't say it's surprising. It feels like this is kind of just a thing that, to me, like when you go back in time and you say, oh, Spider-Man was offered to Microsoft to be an Xbox exclusive, and they kind of just said, no, we're going to focus on our own stuff. And then PlayStation said, oh, yeah, but you got to make it an exclusive, and we'll go ahead and make a AAA game for it. And then they picked Insomniac.
Well, hey, man, Microsoft had Crackdown. They were ahead.
I don't know that some people were saying, oh, this is such a huge loss for Microsoft. It's like, okay, if Microsoft had it, are we sure they would have picked Insomniac to do it? So if they picked another studio, we wouldn't have had the same game that we have with Sony, right? So how do we know that it would have been a big loss for Microsoft? Maybe it would have been worse. Like, people would have been saying, oh my God, they ruined Spider-Man.
Yeah, I think that was probably part of the thought process too. I mean, I don't remember what studios they had back in 2014, but has there been a really good third-person game that is an Xbox exclusive studio?
Well, technically Gears is third person.
Yeah, I would say Gears, but they're not. They didn't start off as they didn't originally make it. Obviously,
I'm just trying to think anything like a third-person action game, not Gears, but something.
Blinks the Time Sweeper.
Recore? That wasn't good. So,
that was Capcom too, I think. No, it wasn't Capcom. But that was terrible. Yeah, they don't that's not their bread and butter, really.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it also just didn't fit in.
I was joking about Crackdown, but I mean that'd be it, kind of. But they didn't obviously originally make that either.
Back then they were really focused, like has been said, on what is still existing today: the Forza, Gears, Halo cycle, and they weren't even in 2014 they hadn't started the whole acquisition thing where they started acquiring studios either. So they were really
that was the infamous E3 press conference, and they're like, "Oh, you got Phantom Dust," and it's like, "You do," and then that never came out.
Yeah, I mean, they were trying to do like Scalebound. That didn't work at that point. They were not in the best place like they are now. And like you said, Daniel, that's not their bread and butter at all. This is really, it works for Sony because this is what they do. This was another peg in all of their studios that they have a lot of these in common, these third-person narrative games or narrative action adventure kind of games. I mean, think about it. Like, Insomniac at that time did, what was it called? Sunset Overdrive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's like they're like one third-party game.
Like, would we have really thought at that time, oh man, Insomniac's gonna really hit it with Spider-Man under Xbox's umbrella, where they had the history of Ratchet and Clank over with Sony. So I don't know. Infamous is Sucker Punch, right?
Yeah, I just mean that type of game.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I could say about Sunset Overdrive was the act of having to keep moving.
Yeah.
You get that a lot with the Spider-Man game too, but that would be about it. I mean, I don't think Microsoft would have chosen Insomniac if they had taken the IP back then. I don't know what we would have gotten, honestly.
Yeah, I loved Activision's quote of telling Marvel, "I hope you find your unicorn," and they certainly found it. Certainly found it with that. And then, like, how cool is it that you have the game and then also Sony has the movie license? So it kind of just makes sense. Would it be cool to have it be multi-platform if you could? like they were in the Activision days, sure, but it is what it
No,
is.
because like some of those ports were a little dicey.
No, but I mean, you wouldn't really have that problem with PS4
No,
and
not that, but
beyond.
they always put in like the Wii, and it's like, wait, why?
Well, no, yeah, like I don't think we would have a Switch version of Spider-Man. I'm just saying, I don't. It would be cool if you were an Xbox only owner and you could play those games. But obviously, when Sony's fit in the bill, that's just part of it, right? You're not gonna be able to do that. However, Microsoft is making, well, not Microsoft, I guess. Game Pass, their major thing that they always want to push, is making waves for another reason. Now, again, I'm just bringing this up. The two people that are involved in this entire article that Kotaku wrote are actually people that I know, Tony Polanco and Gene Park. They're both, game journalists. They had a conversation with each other basically on Twitter about how they were unsubscribing from Game Pass. And then all of a sudden it got turned into, oh my God, people are subscribing from Game Pass like crazy here. Oh my, I'm getting burned out. And really what he was trying to say was Microsoft hasn't lived up to what they were saying, which is you were going to have a first party game each quarter. They've had to delay their two big games like y'all talked about. And then they haven't really, you could say, delivered with the big third parties either. They've relied a lot on indies this year. I put the breakdown here in the doc as well, if you guys want to look at it, for the AAAs from January to May of last year to this year. A lot of sports games, a lot of racing games that they're relying. A lot of that's from the EA Play thing. I mean, like, I'm a Game Pass subscriber, but I love indie games, so I always subscribe to it because there's something to play. Also, especially for me right now, where I don't have a lot of money to spend on games at all. It's something you can pay your $10, $15 a month, and you can play stuff that comes to it. Daniel, you also, you just reviewed a game that was on the service. I mean, what do you think about like people saying, okay, you haven't really been delivering the AAA games. That's what I like to play. I'm unsubscribing. Is that a big problem for Microsoft? Or are people kind of doing this a little bit too early? Should they wait for that big showcase in June? Like, what are your thoughts here?
I mean, I'd be interested to know just how many people are actually unsubscribing. For somebody like me who doesn't have a lot of money, doesn't have a lot of time to play, there are right around 500 games, 400 or 500 games on Game Pass, if you add in the PC games as well, that you get access to. I have been happy with it, now I'm including the PC side on this, but there's a lot of games on the PC side as well that I've played, I've enjoyed them, and maybe they're not AAA games, but they're pretty high up there, and it's given me a chance to play some games that I otherwise would have had to wait for the Steam sale and then work through a backlog trying to get to. Yeah, there isn't as much coming out on the console right now, but we're kind of in my mind, I'm still associating it with COVID, where development on a bunch of games slowed down because of that. I'm still happy with it. I'm still playing it a lot. I'm playing whatever I can when it comes out. To me, it's still worth the money because it gives me a chance to look at other games, and if it's not a game that's not on Game Pass, it gives me a chance to spend some of the money that I have, which isn't a lot, look at other stuff that I wouldn't normally be able to get because it's not the big game. It might be a lesser title, it might be a $30 game instead of a $60 game, but it lets me try out more stuff that's not on Game Pass.
I am Mark. I know this is not your favorite topic.
Well, I view it as a problem of their own making because like last year they put all their big games on it, and people expected every 2 months, hey, a big game, and
right.
Oops, that didn't happen, or of course they can't maintain that type of output, even like without COVID, like they still wouldn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, you buy all these studios, right, and it takes time to make those games, and then what you see a lot of is delays or games that are very far out, and so people say, well, it's going to be a while before those games come. Why do I need to keep subscribing to something that I'm not really using? Honestly, I think that says that's something that people should be more aware of, honestly. I think people need to start really thinking about, with everything becoming a service now, even PlayStation has their own service. It's not the same as Game Pass, but it's similar. You really need to consider what is best for you when you look at everything else that is a service, including the streaming stuff with video and all that. Like Netflix keeps upping their price. Like, do you want to get to the point where you're paying $30 for that? I mean, so that I think that goes to the larger spectrum of you can unsubscribe and subscribe whenever you want to. You don't have to keep paying for it every month if you're not going to use it.
Yeah, I will say I think right now Game Pass is a much better value than a service like Netflix, just because you have a wide variety of games on there, including games that you can go back and replay multiple times and experience.
And you can also buy them as well. It's not like you're limited to only playing them on there like Netflix.
And I mean, I would, for the price that I'm paying for Netflix and the price that I'm paying for Game Pass, if it came down to me having to choose one of them to get rid of, I'm getting rid of Netflix. I get a lot more use out of Game Pass than I do out of Netflix. Now, ask me after this weekend what I spent more time watching. It's probably going to be Netflix because they have the big release coming out with Stranger Things.
Yeah, agreed.
On average, I'm playing more games from Game Pass than I am watching stuff on Netflix.
Mark, so looking at it from the perspective of, so you had a person that was involved very early on in the Xbox creation, Ed Freeze, who says that he's worried about Game Pass becoming bigger than it already is and becoming the Spotify of the game industry. I just can't see the services ever really overtaking the traditional way that you buy and play games, but maybe I'm just being myopic in that view. I mean, like, where do you see that?
If you had the service, why would you buy the game?
I bought games that I play on Game Pass if I really like them. When I had more disposable income.
Do you think Halo 5 or Halo Infinite is ever going to go off Game Pass?
Well, it's not. It's a first party game.
Yeah. So why would you ever buy it? I mean, they sell it in the store, but why? Why would you ever buy it outside of budget concerns? If you could always just be on Game Pass, a Game Pass subscriber, why would you ever buy that game?
You're right. Why would I? If it's a first party game that's ever coming off, you're right. Why would I buy that game?
Even like third party games though, it's like, I mean, I think I just saw like Final Fantasy 13 is going to be knocked off Game Pass, or older games, and it's like people aren't subscribing to Game Pass for that type of stuff. Really, they're either doing they're either doing it for the indies like you or the AAA games.
Well, I'll say this: Game Pass really helps it's really nice to have if you're looking for something to play, but you don't want to spend money. There might be something that you haven't gotten to play in years. I'll use Mass Effect as an example. I don't own a copy of Mass Effect 3 right now. If I ever wanted to play it, I could go on to Game Pass, I think it's still on there, play Mass Effect, and not have to spend any extra money to play it. I can go on there and play, if I feel like playing Skyrim, Oblivion.
But let's use that same example. The EA Play stuff does come off after a while. It doesn't stay on there forever. Knockout City's coming off at the end of this month. So in like 7 days, let's say that you did play the Mass Effect remaster and you got through Mass Effect 1 and you got to halfway to Mass Effect 2 and you go, man, I really want to keep playing that. Well, now you have the option of buying the Mass Effect remaster at a discounted price and now owning that game, and you continue to play it. Well, but you started playing it because of Game Pass, and that's the whole point. They do have those numbers that show that there's 40% more games being played and 50% more purchases from people that play games on that spend more than non-members. So there's something to be said for it is something that helps people go, oh, I like that game. I'm going to buy it now, especially if you decide, oh, I'm going to unsubscribe for a couple months because I don't see anything coming down the line that I really care about. Like this month has been kind of empty for the big releases, right? It's been pretty much all indies. And I wouldn't say they're like killer indies either, other than like Trek to Yomi or Even the Aiden Chronicle one, I don't think it's not the one that I'm really excited about. I'm excited more about the actual JRPG one that's coming next year. I'm not excited too much about this one. I played it. I think it's fine, but this month in particular has not been like the greatest ever for Game Pass. So if you wanted to unsubscribe, like some people have, but you had games that you were playing on it, well, then you have to make that choice. Okay, well, do I wait a couple months to play it again, or do I just go ahead and buy it and play it? So I think it serves a purpose. And
unless
much
it's unless it's like the AAA game, it's always going to be cheaper to buy it. If not digitally, but at least physically. Like Mass Effect Legendary Edition now like $25.
Unless it goes on some big sale at some point. Yeah, it will always be cheaper to buy physically. I mean, I just don't think we need to worry about like it becoming like what Spotify is for music, where pretty much everything's on Spotify for the most part, other than a few people here and there that have chosen artists that have chosen not to be on it. You can complain about the model of how those artists get paid, and it's not the greatest and whatever, but even they have numbers that show that more people buy music or at least listen to music now because they're in these services compared to
the
when
developers aren't getting paid peanuts.
Oh, I agree with you. They're getting paid peanuts, but if we had to start going back to the old ways of, well, you get the single and then hope you buy the album and the rest of the album sucks, people aren't going to buy albums that much anymore. I just don't think that works for games because we have other ways of understanding if that game is going to be good or not before we go and invest that $60 or whatever it is that we want to pay for it. And Xbox is a way to do that. So is going to be PlayStation's game trials thing. I don't know. I just think that I think we are going to see, like, let's say our kids' generations, right, Daniel, mine and yours, of saying, oh, we grew up with everything's a service. So I'm kind of used to, I just turn on this thing and the games are there, and or they get used to the free-to-play stuff, and that's what they play, and maybe you don't have that biggest investment. I think, personally, it's not necessarily the Game Pass or the PlayStation Plus. I think it's the free-to-play games that stand the chance of making it to where we're going to start seeing more of these games as a service, and more of that happening than Game Pass and PlayStation Plus existing. I don't know. That's just me. I see that being more of a thing that's going to happen even further and further than saying more people jumping on Game Pass, more people jumping on PlayStation Plus.
I think the free-to-play model is, I don't know. There are some people that love it and will spend a ton of money on it, and then there are others that refuse to pay a single penny. I think without getting too political or involved too much in economics, if we are going into some type of recession where people are suddenly having to watch their spending, I think you're going to see a lot of free-to-play games start disappearing because people aren't going to have the discretionary income they've been having. And I think that's when you're going to see stuff like Game Pass, like the PlayStation service. More people are going to be relying on that to pick up and play games, picking up a cheap used copy down at GameStop, or picking up a copy when Walmart marks down some of their games on Black Friday. I think Game Pass is going to keep a lot of games around in people's minds, and you're going to see studios start using that to determine, well, yeah, this title might not have had a lot of sales, but people are still playing it a lot, so maybe it's worth revisiting the IP later on.
Mark, we have seen some of that be positive and some of that be negative of, oh, a game is on Game Pass. It gets a lot of buzz, right? But then when there's a game that you think should be on Game Pass that doesn't, you kind of see the other side of it happen, right? Where people are like, oh, I'm going to wait. They complain about the fact that it's not on there. Like, is there a possibility of that? Let's say Sony starts getting into that as well, of like starting to pick up more and more games to put on the service that are newly released, not necessarily the classic stuff. And people start just saying, oh, well, it should be on one of these services, and it's not. Like, doesn't that affect the games as well?
No, it just creates a bunch of entitled gamers.
But, I mean, okay, let's go to Daniel's thought process, right? Of saying, okay, people don't have as much money to spend
Then
on games,
that's fine. Like, you don't need to. Gaming is not like like a requirement. If it's between like having food on the table or having an Xbox like Game Pass subscription, I'd rather have food on the table. Like
Well,
right?
I'm just talking about like your entertainment dollars. What are you getting the most bang for your buck, the most entertainment out of? To me, I'd rather play a game on Game Pass. It might be a 5-6 year old game I haven't played before. I just didn't get around to it when it first came out, but it's good, and I'm going to see, let's say, 10, 15 hours into it, which would probably be more than what I would get to sit down and watch TV, watch something old on Netflix. I mean, I feel like there's, with the amount of titles currently on Game Pass, now if you cut those in half, it could be a completely different tune. But with what's there right now, I think you get more entertainment bang for your buck. And if people are start watching their entertainment money, I think Game Pass is going to be seen as a bigger value than it is already, just for the back library, if nothing else.
I mean, the back library is another issue. I don't know about you, but like me and Sean have like huge stacks of games we've played, or
Right.
played for like an hour and then didn't touch, or just didn't go back to. I mean, why not delve into that?
I have that too.
Like,
it's just
like you don't need a steady diet of new games or fresh things. Go back to your old shit.
Yeah.
Well, but that's the thing. I don't have 500 games to pick from physical copies. Whereas with Game Pass, there's almost 500 games on there that I can just pick something and play it for a little while.
Not physical copies, but digital.
Well, I know. I'm just saying.
Those won't go away on like most Game Pass stuff eventually. Like,
I'm just saying, if with the way I view Game Pass right now, and I'm going to use Netflix as an example because the prices are fairly even. I feel like, or I know I get more entertainment value for my dollars out of Game Pass than I do out of Netflix. So if it came down to where I'm having to start cutting stuff out of my bills, Netflix would go before Game Pass, just because I use it more. There's more with it. And I think as long as it has that value where there's a large catalog of stuff to choose from that are decent to good games, I think people are going to, if we have people start cutting their budgets, Game Pass is going to look like a better and better value.
Okay, but let's say to the people that okay, we played a lot of these games, right, that are on Game Pass and everything, and you're saying, well, but I need that sort of steady diet of what you promised me. I need those newer games to get me to keep subscribing to this service. And especially now that you're cutting off two of the big games that we were expecting, just like last year. Okay, last year we got the two big games, right? We got Forza, we got Halo, which now people are thinking, oh, maybe we shouldn't have gotten Halo. But that's beyond the point. It's already out. You can't do nothing about it. And you also got Psychonauts and some other games. Like right now, the two games people are looking forward to are not happening. So if you're going to go by their logic, doesn't Microsoft owe you? You better do something, right? You better get some third parties, some big third parties. You better get something that makes me want to keep subscribing to this service.
If those people actually exist and they post on like Twitter or like forums, Microsoft should find them and then ban their account so they can't actually subscribe anymore.
I mean, so the way I'm looking at it is I'm paying the money for...
You're paying for a library, which is more justifiable than bitching that you don't have the latest version, latest game.
I mean...
Right.
And part of it is I went into the year not expecting to get those two games. I figured they were going to get delayed to either the end of 2022 or end of 2023 anyway. So to me, it's not shocking. I'm not upset about it because I didn't expect them to come out anyway.
I can kind of understand the people that are upset about Starfield because they made such a big deal about announcing it a year before.
Yeah, and I can kind of get gameplay.
Yeah, right, that wasn't Microsoft that decided to announce it either. I mean, that was before Microsoft bought out Bethesda.
Well, that was at the same time they bought out, but they were already part of Bethesda.
Also, for people who are actually excited for that game, look at Bethesda's recent track record. Like, that should give you some pause right there.
But, I mean, looking at it right now if I'm looking at this list of what has come out this year, when you're looking at
No,
AAAs
this
for.
list is dire,
Yeah.
but like you can cancel.
No, I agree. I'm just saying. I'm looking at it from their perspective. Also, I think we need to don't count your chickens before they hatch because they still have a big show that's happening in about 2 weeks. And they announced, I think, like 20 games that were coming to Game Pass on the one last year. So,
Yeah, but they're not going to suddenly
like,
say like, "Oh, Halo, we finally fixed up Halo and it's available now."
no, they're not going to say we finally fixed up Halo, but maybe they do announce a bunch of third-party deals that they made with some games. Because I bet you they're going to do that same thing they've been doing for the past I don't know how long. Every game we show today is going to be on Game Pass. And there's going to be some big third-party games that are maybe you don't expect that are going to be on there. And then people are going to be going, well, I got to subscribe again. And that's what I'm saying. Like everybody that's complaining right now, I think you need to let June 12th happen. And also Summer Game Fest as well on June 9th before we start saying, oh my God, this is dire. It's the whole year is done. Forget that. You know, if you're an Xbox only gamer, I get you're upset right now, but I think you need to be ready because I don't think Microsoft's going to be hyping the hell out of something if they don't have a lot of things ready to show for that event. So maybe it won't be everything you like. Maybe there will be some more indies that you don't care about, but there will be things that they're going to get you hyped, I'd imagine. Plus, you know, you got Cuphead coming in about a month, so there's that as well. But anyway, moving on to a few other things here. There's a Death Stranding sequel coming, thanks to Norman Reedus, who decided that he was going to mouth off about there being a part 2.
Maybe.
I kind of thought that, like, after they come out with this, like, that big that, like, remastered whatever version that is, the what do they call those? Yeah, but PS5 has that special name for it that they give. I can't think of it right now. But yeah, it was like, oh, all these features of how to basically make the game easier to play. It kind of seemed like that's it, right? Kojima's moving on. You have all these other rumors about Kojima's making a different game and all that stuff. Doesn't mean he couldn't have 2 games going on at once. That's interesting that you have a part 2 already happening. Are you? I know you guys weren't the most hyped about Death Stranding 1, but
you have to wonder how much they're going to reuse.
Yeah.
Well, and even if they just started work on it, we're what 4 years out at the ideally or realistically 4 years out from getting the game. Maybe 3 if they're reusing a bunch of stuff. I mean, I don't think it's not like it's something that's going to be coming out next year. You might see a official announcement next year, but you're still looking at 3 to 4 years before the game's actually playable by anyone outside of the studio.
Death Stranding 2 will just be PT length. It'll just be like an hour long.
All we'll get is a trailer.
Yeah. All we'll get is a trailer, and then like 2 years later, oh, here comes the game finally, or whatever. He did say it's like 2 or 3 years out, possibly. It took him, 2 or 3 years to finish all the mocap sessions and everything with the first one?
Yeah, but that's
insane.
That's the thing, is like they can reuse a lot of that. I mean, they have that. They have this model, obviously.
Well, plus we don't know if all of that was used in that game, right? Some of that could have been used for part 2.
Yeah.
Or they have, he does say. Yeah. Yeah. He does say we just started part 2 of that. So yeah, I don't think that that's coming pretty soon at all.
Right.
Let's get to the 2 more games things that we have here before we get into like some of the, I guess, TV stuff. Arma is coming back. It's coming to console. It's actually currently available in early access. Any thoughts on this? And there's also a Shadow Remastered Deluxe coming, which has been announced for basically all the consoles. Coming late 22.
Don't care about Arma. Shatter's awesome.
So for people like me, have no idea what that is.
It's Breakout, but it's like has a cool look to it and has a really great soundtrack. And you can it's like more physics based because you can like suck in the ball and also like push it out.
And it's $10. So.
Yeah, I mean I think that's what the original game was. It's funny because like the studio who made it, like that game actually had a fair amount of buzz back then, and the studio didn't do anything afterward. They made like rugby games or like bullshit like that. And it's like, why don't you make another good game? Like
Atari came out with their own like Breakout remastered thing earlier this year as well. So,
Yeah.
any thoughts on either one of those?
I know
Go ahead.
I just know Arma has like a following, but I never played it because it's just too hardcore.
Well, I kind of wonder if this is trying to get people, fans of Battlefield, the series, interested in Arma. Because right now, you got a lot of hardcore Battlefield fans that are unhappy with the franchise and looking for something new. And Arma is that war simulation game that could take the place of Battlefield in some people's minds if they're looking to go to something new. And I wonder if that's kind of why it went into early access at this point, and they're choosing not to do Arma 4 yet. They're just doing the Reforger, I think is what it's called.
Well, especially being on console, like that's a first as well, I think. So
yeah, I think they're seeing that this is the time to take a bite out of Battlefield's audience
and Call of Duty. I mean, let's be honest, like that didn't set the world on fire like last year either. So yeah, Arma's cool, but I mean that's what like PUBG's based on.
Well, they added some more big names to the Twisted Metal TV show. Don't know if that's going to make you guys watch or not, but Thomas Hayden Church and Nev Campbell are now joining Anthony Mackie and Stephanie Beatriz in the upcoming Twisted Metal TV show. Church is going to be Agent Stone, which is the highway patrolman, and then Nev is going to play Raven. I have no affinity for Twisted Metal at all, so I don't really care.
I like all these actors, and their roles are okay, I guess. But, like, this being a comedy show is just, like, bewildering to me. Like,
yeah, it seems like it should be, like, a more of a action...
Yeah, drama, or, like, dark... Like, it's not, like, maybe dark comedy or something, but, like, having Anthony Mackie play, like, a guy named, like, Mr. Motormouth or something, and it's like, that's really dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of those things that it could be a massive train wreck, or it could be something that surprises a lot of people with how it is. I think back, what was it, Deadly Class on Sci-Fi?
I love that show.
Kind of that comedy, but still extremely violent feel.
Yeah.
It could be that.
Maybe something in that vein could work
with the Twisted Metal
franchise.
Yeah, speaking of something that was a bit controversial, the Halo show has ended. I've only watched, I think, the first 3 episodes. I keep meaning to go back and watch the other ones, but...
You can skip episode 7, trust me.
Doesn't sound great.
I haven't seen it yet. I saw the first 2 episodes, but I know what you're referring to on episode 7, and yeah.
I watched it all. It was mostly fine. It was a little too slow, though, and it needed like 1 or 2 more action scenes to make it interesting, or to make it kind of fuller. Because there's only
why just like 1 or 2? Like out of that entire series, you're going to say just 1 or 2 more action scenes?
Because the action scenes they have are they're decent enough. Although like the first person shots are really goofy, I think. But I mean, they only have 10 episodes, and it's on Showtime, or 9 episodes, and it's on Showtime, so they don't have a big budget.
Paramount Plus as well.
But Natasha McElhenney's good as Halsey, and Pablo Schreiber was fine enough.
Yeah, I liked him as the Halo. I mean, Daniel, like, what do you think about the whole people complaining about him having his helmet off more than having his helmet on?
Honestly, I could care less about that. I knew if we ever got an adaptation of it, the helmet would be off, just because it seems like Hollywood actors, the helmets always come off. I mean, Mandalorian in the first season, I think we were lucky that the helmet stayed on as much as it did. We saw it come off a little bit more in the second season, and I'm sure we're going to see it coming off more in the third season. My question for Mark is, since you've watched the whole show, is it better than Picard and Discovery?
I mean, it couldn't... Nothing could be worse than Picard or Discovery. So.
Oh, yes, it could. Yes, it could. Trust me.
Like, at least the show had, like a plot you could understand reasonably well, or characters that, like, didn't make you want to punch the screen. Except for, like, the 1 or 2 people that are in episode 7.
It's not like Paramount Plus does have some good shows. Apparently, like that Offer show, which is the story of how The Godfather almost didn't happen, and then that 1883 show as well. So, I mean, Yeah, I know you're not the biggest fan of the Star Trek ones, but
Hey,
not everything they
Nope,
do is
no one
terrible.
is.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of Discovery and Picard. I was disappointed in those. Strange New Worlds, even after the third episode, I'm still enjoying. I'm still optimistic about it. Lower Decks, I still find funny. Yeah, I mean, I don't know when we're going to get a season 3 of that, but I mean, it's just Discovery and Picard just does not feel like Star Trek, and it does not. I don't know. I can't get into those two. I keep giving them chances, and I keep getting disappointed so severely.
The only character I kind of don't like on New Worlds is Ortega's. She just belongs in like the Orville.
Yeah, I could see that, but I mean, again, I can overlook one crew member that seems odd in it. I'm trusting there's a reason for it, and we'll find out in an episode later on. But we have already seen a lot more character development in 3 episodes for different cast members than we've seen on Discovery in 4 seasons.
In 1 episode, much less 3.
Yeah. Well, I just said all 3 because it seems like you get more characters, more character development for different characters in each episode than you get in the entire 4 seasons of Discovery for one character.
Yeah, but yeah, Halo's fine. I mean, it's not as good like The Witcher, but not the budget, obviously, quite as rich in mythology. I mean, they're basically making their own. So
they did say that pretty much there's a Halo season 2 happening already.
Okay, yeah, it got picked up, So
hopefully Halo season 2 doesn't get worse, like apparently many people thought The Witcher season 2 did. So hopefully it gets better, not worse. Anybody else besides me watch Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness? What did you? I thought it was good. I liked it.
Yeah, I did too.
I thought it was. I liked a lot of the Sam Raimi shots.
Yeah,
but I thought
you could definitely tell there's a lot of Sam Raimi in it.
The two weird things to me were, for a movie called Multiverse of Madness, they only went to like one damn alternate universe.
Yeah, the montage of different universes, that was your...
Yeah, which is cool, but like they did that in like, everything and everywhere all at once kind of stole their thunder a lot.
Yeah.
And then I was really confused about like alternate reality Wanda, like who was her husband, or like how she have the kids.
I'm assuming that Vision is just not existent in that world. Like she's already accepted that is not there, or he tried to do the escape thing and he didn't come back. He died and she didn't bring him back or something.
Or the Infinity Stone helped him father children.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean,
because he was dead, right? Like the whole point was that other than that new Vision, who's not really Vision, right? He's like copy or whatever.
Or is he a copy?
Vision is dead, right? So
maybe, because I mean that was their whole big conversation during the battle. You replace all the parts.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's still the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he'll come back eventually, and I also don't think like Wanda's dead.
No, I don't. think
she's definitely not. No.
Well, I think I can give you my opinion. I don't want to spoil the movie for anybody, so if you haven't seen it, don't listen to me in the next little bit of this conversation. But the Doctor Strange that came back to the did they call it the 616 universe?
Yeah, the 616. Yeah,
I think it was actually the evil Doctor Strange that was trapped in the universe that had the incursion. Because if you noticed, we never really saw what happened to the body, and we just had him get woken up, and that's the extent of what we were told. So, and then we got the third eye. So something tells me that there's more craziness about to happen.
Well, I think he just couldn't repress those the damned, so some of that still lives within him. That's why he has a third eye. And then, if you think about the comics, that third eye gives him extra powers and things like that. So,
well, you also had the tear in the back of the cloak that would have been right where the went through on the one that was thrown out the window.
Exactly. There's that too, and then obviously his wife, who's supposed to be his wife in the comic, shows up in the extra scene. So obviously there's going to be more to that. as we go on. But I really overall enjoyed the movie. Gonna be interesting to see if that is who winds up being Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four or not.
Yeah.
That's what everyone wants.
Yeah, it's who everyone wants, and I think even in the little bit that we had, he did a good job. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what scenes were cut, because like we didn't get the Tom Cruise as Iron Man that we saw in the Super Bowl trailer, and apparently there were a bunch of other cameos that got cut.
Yeah, there was some picture of like Bruce Campbell as Doctor Strange at one point, and I was waiting for that to happen, and it didn't.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what happens with all these characters now. I think, obviously, with Thor, that's going to be a different movie, but we'll see, I guess. I think overall, it definitely deserves the money that it is earning.
I also like Haley Atwell a lot.
Yeah, I know you're always a big fan of her.
Yeah.
So, okay, I think unless somebody wants to bring up anything else, that's pretty much it for the show this week. Hopefully you check out what we have on the rest of the WTM Network. If we do have a review of Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness by Mr. Mark Radlich and his crew. If you want to go check that out, go subscribe either on the podcast feed or on YouTube, and you can check it out video and audio form and whatever else we got going on as well. We'll be back next week. Until then, folks, see you later.